Let's start with the question. How many of you have invested in hedge funds? Please raise your hand. Okay, I see a couple of hands, but not surprisingly, too many. So hedge funds typically are available only for the professionals. And they are active investment vehicles that have been designed to maximize returns while minimizing risk. Unlike the conventional, more regulated funds, hedge fund managers has a lot of freedom. They can use various sophisticated tools like leverage, short selling, and derivatives in their efforts achieving high returns while minimizing the risk. Even though that many of you have not invested in hedge funds directly, most of you have exposed indirectly to hedge funds. For example, Aalto Endowment Fund has allocated around 10% of its assets to hedge funds. Aalto Endowment Fund's materials state that hedge funds are used for diversification purposes. Aalto Endowment Fund seek that kind of funds which provide low correlation to standard equities and bonds. And these funds provide stable returns in a long term. And when Aalto Endowment Fund get that kind of stable returns, it can provide, or university can provide stable funding for education and research. That's why those funds are used in Aalto Endowment Fund. You are also exposed to hedge funds through your pensions. For example, Finnish pension funds have invested more than 10% of their assets to these funds. Varma is the biggest Finnish investor. It has invested more than 60% to these funds. Varma CEO Risto Murto often said in media that they use hedge funds because they provide higher returns than bonds and lower risk than equities. And as a fresh PhD student, I had the chance to talk with Risto Murto, and he said that the funds to which they invest are not in those databases what academics use in their research purposes. So they are that kind of funds like Coke. They are secretive funds, and they do not want to disclose their returns so that anyone cannot copy or mimic these funds. And after talking with Risto and other institutional investors and reviewing the academic literature, as a PhD student, I already realized that even after 30 years of research, we do not even know that what is the size of the hedge fund industry, what are the returns. And then I kind of thought that this will be my research agenda. And after defending my thesis, I started to collaborate with Robert Kosowski from Imperial College And in that time, Robert was head of hedge fund center at Imperial. And our goal was to build the largest possible hedge fund infra and merge all available data, which is available either from public or commercial sources. And using that kind of database, we show that there is no much overlapping between those commercial databases used in academic research. For example, this Venn diagram shows that more than 70% of all hedge funds in our sample, they reported only one of the databases, and only 2% reported all of those major databases. And it had kind of big implications that even most of the research published in top journals used only one of those databases, and results were very sensitive whether you just use one of those databases compared to all of those which were available. Even that our database missed some of those secretive, large, most prominent funds like Medallion, for example. And after the financial crisis, there was a Wall Street reform, and US regulator started to collect information on hedge funds. Trump administration kind of said to these regulators that we do not provide any more funding to them, and then OFR, Office of Financial Research, contacted me, and I started to collaborate with the US regulator, and we built the first comprehensive hedge fund database that contained even those large secretive funds. And I was kind of lucky that because of Republicans wanted to cut the funding and less regulation, and then OFR did not have money to just build themselves the database. So we were the first who estimated the aggregate hedge fund industry size. We find that the industry was $6 trillion. And from the graph, you can see in blue that there are those vendor-listed funds, which most of the academics and even regulator used in their research and monitoring systemic risk. You can see that dashed red line that there are those non-listed so-called secretive funds, that nowadays more than half of those assets are not in those databases which academics tend to use in their research, and regulators tend to use monitoring systemic risk. So that was major contribution in that time. Then we also showed this dashed red line that there are cumulative returns for those secretive funds which are not in databases what academics use, that they have significantly higher returns. And this kind of confirms what the biggest Finnish investors like Risto Murto said, that they tend to invest in that kind of funds which are not in those databases. And that's kind of interesting to see that they were on the map. Implications of my research. So it has been very clear that it is important to use widest possible data in academic research. Otherwise, your results can be biased. And regulators, when they monitor systemic risk in the financial system, it's very important also to have those largest funds in their sample so that they can monitor and manage systemic risks. And finally, for the investors like Aalto Endowment Fund or Finnish pension funds, so they have to dig deeper to data and have connections so that they can have access to those funds which are a bit like a Coke, that kind of secretive funds. They provide the highest returns and are most useful, providing higher returns and diversification benefits. I will conclude saying something about my current ongoing research. So we have further developed that our database. We have went through a lot of regulatory filings and other data sources, and we have identified all diverse-owned hedge fund managers, and we find that these minority or female-owned managers has challenges in capital raising, even though that there has been a lot of discussion in media, and also they have designed programs to invest in that kind of emerging managers. As an implication, we will make those our lists public so that all investors can find that kind of diverse-owned funds. And as a last ongoing paper, we have worked with newest machine learning methods. We have estimated trustworthiness from the hedge fund managers and other professionals' faces. And what we find that initial impression is very important. If you kind of get the impression from the face that a fund manager or marketing people of the fund are very trustful looking, then that kind of funds have received more flows and they get too much money to manage. And that means that they face constraints and their future returns are lower. So as a tip for the institutional investor is that when you have those face-to-face meetings, that you should not just rely on the initial impression, but you should dig deeper to the fund and really understand what are the drivers of the performance of the fund. Thank you very much.